Hey, and welcome to another episode of Future Steps Creative with yours truly, Marlon Macpherson from marlonmacpherson.com. In this episode of the podcast, I'm talking about WordPress versus hosted platforms like Squarespace or Wix or even Weebly. This topic came about recently for me because I've had to speak to at least a couple of people over the last few days about what platform might be suitable for them. And I thought it would be a great topic for people who are trying to set up a website at this present moment in time, and you're looking at what options are probably best for you. No doubt, if you've been searching around online about website related stuff, you will be targeted with ads from Squarespace, Wix, or any of these other hosted platforms. So let's jump into what's a hosted platform versus what WordPress is, just to give you some kind of understanding of what I'm talking about here. So WordPress, as you might already know, is the most popular platform online, where most websites, around 30% of websites on the internet worldwide, are using WordPress. And it's a content management system, meaning that you can have all your files all nicely structured and managed in one piece of software, which is what the platform offers you. Your pages, all your posts for your website, any images, any sort of like documents or audio files, video files, if you add those to your website as well, you'll be able to manage those in a nice interface with a nice graphical user interface, as opposed to just building your static like back in the day, mostly websites were static, built in HTML language, and you have to have someone that puts in the code, write the code for the pages, and it was a nightmare to update these site pages because you have to know how to write HTML, or at least know what you're looking at to be able to edit HTML. Nowadays, if you have, there's lots and lots of CMSs or content management systems. If you have one of those, you don't need to go through, you don't have to have code knowledge, even though that's useful. You don't need to touch the code. You can edit your site. You can update pages and content and change things out fairly straightforwardly. So WordPress is the most popular one. And then you have these hosted platforms, which are basically another type of CMS, but instead of you managing a lot of the things that you would do on your own, like as in with WordPress, these platforms give you an all-in-one package where there's a company behind it actually providing a lot of the functions and the features and the running of that platform for you, so you don't have to worry about that. So what that means is that if you join one of these platforms, you basically pay them a fee on a monthly basis, and sometimes you can start for free as well, and you can basically use the templates that they provide you with. You don't need to necessarily have web design or web development skills. You do need to understand what design looks like, or what good design looks like, and be able to figure out how to make your websites look great. But you can start with one of their templates and just customize it, swap out the information and the content, the images, etc., and make it look like what you want it to look like. But you're not having to deal with the setting up of the software like you would do with WordPress. So WordPress is if, for example, you're trying to start your own website and you want to do it yourself. Instead of hiring somebody, you can hire someone as well, a professional, to do it for you. But either way, WordPress needs to be set up and configured by you or someone that you hire, and they need to build that site for you. And you have to obviously spend an upfront amount of money to get that up and running, especially if you're hiring a WordPress web designer or developer to build out the site. So there's an upfront cost, but there's no ongoing monthly fee that you do need to pay to anyone, because WordPress at its core is a free open source software, which means that anyone can use it on their website. All you got to do is make sure you have it hosted somewhere, and you can host it by yourself, which I don't recommend. You know, it is possible to do that, but the best thing to do is have a professional hosting company take care of your WordPress website. So the hosting company keeps it online. So, you know, when people type in your website name, it's live on the internet. If you obviously don't have a host, no one can see this website because it's not kept somewhere. And so, you know, the information can be pulled, or the pages can be pulled when somebody pulls up or types in your website name. So that being said, I have a few points that I want to go through here, which are going to help you decide whether or not one platform is better than the other for you. None is better than the other, but everyone has different needs, and everyone have different expectations, and they're at a different stage in their journey. Maybe you're just starting your brand or your online business, but you don't necessarily need a lot of bells and whistles. You don't necessarily need something advanced. This is where I would probably look at one of these hosted platforms, and they're quite interesting because they do look good with the designs and everything, but it's down to these points that I'm going to go through now with you that's going to help you decide whether or not it's good for you. So let's start with hosting. This is one of the things that you need to bear in mind, and I've touched on hosting just now already, but let's look into it a bit more. So with WordPress, like I said, you do need to find a host for it. Now, the beauty about being able to find a host for WordPress is that there are hundreds of hosting companies that you can use to actually have your website on. So you would basically pay them a fee for the year, or you could pay monthly in some cases, but I pay for the whole year. And you can have them take care of, making sure that your site is available on the internet. So they deal with that. You don't have to worry about hosting it yourself. And the good thing is that you can choose to move your website from one host to another if you decide that, okay, you've outgrown the host that you've been with for a while, or you've had issues, or you don't like the features anymore, or you need more features. You can move to a new host, which is maybe a more premium host that gives you more bandwidth or more file storage space-wise for your websites, that kind of thing. With self-hosted platforms like Squarespace, for example, they provide you with everything out the box. They give you the hosting, everything's included in that fee that you pay them. Now, this is great if you don't want to have to be dealing with multiple companies or be trying to figure out how to connect your website or set up your website on a particular host. But it is straightforward if you use WordPress nowadays. It's not half as complicated as it used to be, and we can talk about that in another episode or something. But the problem that I have with, or the potential issue that I can see here with self-hosted platforms, is that if you decide that you want to now move from whichever self-hosted platform to another one, they are not cross-compatible. You can't just move your website from one company to another. If you decide that, oh, you know what, I don't like how these people operate anymore, I want to move my website. Nope, you can't do that easily. Nor can you just move it to WordPress or change it over to a WordPress site easily. What you can do is export your content, and I can tell you that for sure because I have seen a video on this for Squarespace, and I would imagine the others do have some way of exporting your content. And by content, I'm talking about your website pages, the information, the text that's on the pages. You can export those pages, and you can export your blog posts or articles, and you can also have some way possibly to export images or pull those images off of the site as well. The crucial thing to bear in mind here is that when you do export those pages and the content, you do not keep the design. The design is proprietary. It's basically built into their platform. Their systems and their templates are designed to be used on their platform. So you would have to basically replicate the design. If you want to keep that same design that you had on their platform, you have to replicate it on whichever platform you're going on to. All you're doing is exporting the images or the pages and the content itself all together, so you can then have an easier time of adding that content into your new site. Let's say you move across to WordPress, there's an import function in WordPress, you can pull those in, but then the styling is going to be based on the theme on that new WordPress site or whichever platform, and you have to go in and format that the way you want it. So it basically means that you have to set your site up again and spend a lot of time doing that. And probably if you're not doing it yourself, you're spending money to basically rebuild your site, except that you're not doing the content over again. So that being said, is something to consider. Are you going to stick with that platform, or are you going to potentially need to move your website to a new platform because possibly you might be outgrowing the features that a self-hosted platform have? So bear that in mind. Let's talk about, and talking about features, by the way, all these platforms have really great plugins from what I can tell. They'll let you set up online stores, they'll let you do marketing and so on. But the thing to consider is, as you start adding more things, if you're doing a basic website, like you just need a one pager with just information about who you are, what your brand is, what you do, and maybe some basic things, you can easily get into one of these self-hosted platforms without spending a big upfront cost, because they just charge you a monthly fee. All you got to do is figure out how to design your pages or customize one of their templates that you choose, and adding your content like I mentioned before. But out the gate, you can have a website running within a day or a few hours or whatever, just making sure, you just got to make sure it looks good. And if you've got decent design skills, then great. If not, you're going to have to hire someone to help you deal with that, who deals with one of these platforms anyway. So there's still a potential that you're going to have an upfront cost as far as that's concerned. When you start off, the lowest plans give you basic functions. As you step up, if you need an online store, if you need marketing, like if you need to capture leads and have advanced marketing systems set up, then you're going to pay a lot more per month. And this is where they can get you. And the deeper you go, the more things you add, it makes it difficult for you to move away from that platform, because it's going to be disruptive. And you have to think about what's my business or my brand going to need in, say, a year's time, in 6 months' time, in 5 years' time. Is it sustainable? Is it sensible to actually build my foundations on one of these platforms and then have to go through the pain and the aggro of moving things across to a new website? So that's one of the key things. Anyway, moving on to software updates. We're talking about the core software itself. Each one of these platforms, they are running some sort of software system to give you that content management that they're known for. So WordPress obviously is the core software for WordPress websites. They have WordPress is free, like I said, to use. It's an open source platform, so people can see the code and contribute to it. If you're a developer, you can create these additional bits of software called plugins to give it functionality. And there are endless amounts of plugins out there for WordPress. No matter what kind of site you want to build, there is most likely going to be a plugin that solves the problem that you have, or will give you the feature or the functionality that you're looking to get. So that being said, WordPress is the most flexible from that perspective. And I'm going to talk about flexibility in a bit more. I'm going to touch on that right after this. With self-hosted platforms, they give you a lot less number of plugins, but they have high quality plugins that they manage, and they make sure that they're compatible with the system, so it can potentially be a lot more stable. But again, the more plugins you decide to add, let's say you need a shopping cart and you need all of these other features for marketing and so on, if you want to do a membership site or more advanced sites, you're definitely going to be paying out the nose each month. And if you start off doing that, you're going to probably be stuck, or you're going to disrupt your business when you try to move. So moving on to, and before we move on to that one, actually, the key thing to realize here too is that Squarespace, Wix, self-hosted platforms, they have a team behind the platform that's working. That's who you're paying the money to. You're paying them this subscription, and they take care of any issues and updates on your site. So if something was to go wrong with the platform, they will fix any issues, and you just have to contact their support. That being said, WordPress, you basically, once you build your site, you can manage your plugins yourself. Most plugins have updates that come out, and it's fairly straightforward to update these plugins, but it's better to have a professional deal with that, because there's sometimes compatibility issues, especially if you install too many plugins or really low quality plugins, because you're inexperienced and you don't know what to look for. And then they clash with the code behind the scenes, and it can break your site or cause things to go wrong. That being said, I use premium plugins on my website, and I try to use as little as possible, because the least number of plugins you have, the less likelihood of something breaking or going wrong in terms of being any conflicts happening in the background. There are companies that you can pay, or people that you can pay to maintain or to take care of these software updates on a monthly basis for you. If you're running your business, it's a really good investment to have someone else take care of it for you. One is that it saves you time, because you need to be running your business, and two is that you don't have to worry and try and figure these things out and not know what to do if you update a plugin and something goes wrong. So you have options on both sides, but again, we're going to jump into flexibility now, so you can see the differences here. So I think really all I've said so far sums up which one's more flexible than the other for you. If you're looking for ease of use, going with one of the self-hosted platforms would actually help you to get rid of a lot more of the technical stuff that you would normally need to deal with in WordPress, for example. But that being said, WordPress is also getting much better. Every update they come out with, a lot more features and functionality gets added in that wasn't there before, that you would have had to have maybe a developer go in and add something for you if you don't have a clue what you're doing. With code, you have to hire a developer normally. But nowadays they're making it much better. But with Squarespace, Wix, Weebly, they have less of a learning curve. Once you sign up, you go in and it's pretty straightforward to get your template up and start editing your template. If you're using WordPress, again, it's crucial that you use some sort of a premium theme. The theme is the look and the feel of the website. I use Divi simply because it has a built-in page builder, which is the #1 page builder in the world. It is easy to drag and drop and edit your content just on the page, add images, add all kinds of nice flashy looking designs without having to touch any code. So it's still easy on WordPress, but the learning curve is a little bit more steep than it is with one of the hosted platforms. And that being said, though, once you learn WordPress, and there's a lot of support, there's a lot of content on YouTube and all over the place that you can learn WordPress with, lots of courses. I put out content around WordPress if you wanted to learn WordPress as well. So there is endless opportunities. There are endless opportunities with WordPress and to learn how to use it. And I would say if you're looking to build something out for flexibility, that's where you need to go, because again, all the reasons I've mentioned before with moving platforms, hosting, updates, adding multiple plugins, or finding a solution for your specific needs, WordPress will no doubt have something out there for you. I've already talked about ease of use. So these are the things that you probably need to think about. So in conclusion, let me just wrap up and say this, that if you're just starting out and you don't have any sort of immediate need to have anything advanced on your website right now, like a store, or to have some email marketing systems where you're capturing leads and having some sort of a sales funnel that you're pushing people through, which is pretty advanced. Those are the typical type of sites that I build for myself and for clients. Then if you don't need any of that, you're probably better off just using one of the self-hosted platforms. One is going to cost you way less upfront, and the learning curve and all these things that I mentioned previously is probably going to be easier for you. You could start there, but the moment you realize that you need a much bigger site, you need a much more advanced site, I would say switch to WordPress. And at that point, if your site's really small, maybe you have 1 or 2 pages on your site, it's not going to be a big deal to recreate those designs and export the content onto WordPress or some other platform. But obviously, I'm a big advocate for WordPress, so I would say obviously go to WordPress. So you can start there, save yourself some money potentially. But if you know that your business is going to need to grow, maybe you're going to still start off with a very simple site, but you need to grow and you need to have that solid foundation already in place, and you don't want to have to go through the hassle of, relearning a platform and building out something again. Even though it might be a small site that you started with that you export from one to the other, it's still a hassle to have to go over these things again. So I would say just start on WordPress. It doesn't have to be super expensive, and you can learn how to set a WordPress website up yourself, or there's lots of people that you can hire if you're willing to do a lot of the work yourself. You can get WordPress websites set up at a reasonable cost, or at cheap enough cost that you can say, okay, it's comparable or at least justified for a very small website. Obviously, you'll have the opportunity to grow and add things as you go, so you don't need to start out with a massive thing to begin with. So these are the things that I would say, in conclusion, that you need to bear in mind. And I hope this actually makes sense. I know I've rambled a little bit and I've probably got a bit muddled up, but If you have any questions, if it sounds a bit too confusing, reach out to me and I'll try to answer questions. If you're on YouTube, leave some comments below and I will answer those comments. If you're on the podcast, obviously reach out to me. You can email me at info@marlonmcpherson.com, or you can head to the website and use my contact form, as well as share, like, and subscribe. Leave me a review on Stitcher, Spotify, as well as on Apple Podcasts. I almost forgot what Apple calls it. It used to be iTunes. Thanks for listening. I appreciate your time, and I will speak to you in the next one.